The truth about discipline no one talks about. There is a quiet frustration many people carry, one they rarely say out loud, because admitting it feels like a personal failure. They know what they should do. They know what kind of person they want to become. They've read the books, watched the videos, saved the quotes, and yet they don't follow through. They promise themselves that tomorrow will be different, that next week they'll start, that someday discipline will finally click. But here's what no one tells you. The problem isn't that you lack discipline. The problem is that you've been taught a lie about what discipline actually is. Think about this for a moment. If discipline were simply about willpower, then the people who struggle the most would just be weak. But that doesn't feel true, does it? Because some of the most intelligent, sensitive, and self-aware people are the ones who suffer the deepest guilt over their lack of consistency. So, what's really going on? Carl Jung once said that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. And nowhere is this more visible than in our relationship with discipline, because what we call laziness is often unconscious resistance. What we call lack of motivation is often a deeper conflict between who we are and who we believe we're supposed to be. But here's what no one tells you. Discipline doesn't begin with action. It begins with identity. Most people try to force discipline on top of a life they don't actually believe in. They try to impose routines on goals they inherited, not chose. They demand consistency from a self that feels disconnected, unheard, or quietly resentful. And then they wonder why they burn out. Friedrich Nietzsche understood this deeply when he wrote about the will to power, not as domination over others, but as the drive to shape oneself according to one's deepest values. To Nietzsche, discipline without meaning was tyranny, but discipline with meaning was liberation. Now ask yourself this: what are you asking discipline to protect? Because Viktor Frankl, who survived the unimaginable conditions of Nazi concentration camps, observed something remarkable. Those who survived were not the strongest physically, but those who had a reason to endure. Meaning made suffering bearable. Purpose made discipline possible. Frankl didn't wake up disciplined because he enjoyed pain. He endured because he knew why he was enduring. And this is the truth most people never hear. Discipline is not about forcing yourself to do hard things. It is about refusing to abandon what gives your life meaning. But here's where it gets uncomfortable. Many people don't lack discipline. They lack honesty. They tell themselves they want one life, while unconsciously living for another. They say they want growth, but cling to comfort. They say they want freedom, but fear responsibility. Carl Jung would call this a split psyche, a conflict between the conscious persona and the shadow. The shadow isn't evil. It's simply the part of you that resists being controlled. So when you force discipline without integration, your shadow fights back. You procrastinate. You sabotage. You forget. And then you blame yourself. But here's what no one tells you. Discipline that comes from self-hatred will never last. Discipline that comes from self-understanding will. Alan Watts often warned against treating the self like a machine to be optimized. He believed that when we try to dominate ourselves, we create an internal war. One part commanding, another resisting. Real discipline, he suggested, emerges naturally when there is harmony, when action flows from understanding rather than pressure. This is why Napoleon Hill emphasized autosuggestion and belief. He knew that behavior follows self. If you see yourself as inconsistent, discipline feels like punishment. If you see yourself as purposeful, discipline feels like alignment. So let's tell the truth. Discipline is not something you do. It is something that happens when who you are and what you value finally agree. Think about this for a moment. Have you ever noticed how disciplined you can be when something truly matters? When love is on the line, when your dignity is threatened, when your future feels real. Suddenly, effort appears, energy returns, consistency becomes possible. That's not discipline. That's devotion. And devotion is discipline, is a true source. Most people try to build discipline from the outside, in routines, schedules, punishments, but lasting discipline is built from the inside out, meaning identity, awareness. Carl Jung believed that growth requires confronting what we avoid, Nietzsche believed it requires choosing hardship over comfort. Viktor Frankl believed it requires a reason strong enough to carry suffering. Napoleon Hill believed it requires belief repeated until it becomes reality. They were all pointing to the same truth from different angles. Discipline is not self-control. It is self-alignment. And once you see this, everything changes. You stop asking, "Why can't I stick to anything?" and start asking, "What am I actually committed to?" You stop forcing habits and start clarifying values. You stop punishing yourself for inconsistency and start listening to what your resistance is trying to tell you. Because resistance is information, and here's the quiet secret. The most disciplined people are not the harshest with themselves. They are the clearest about what matters. They don't rely on motivation. They rely on meaning. They don't wake up inspired every day. They wake up devoted. So if discipline has felt like a constant battle, this is your invitation. Stop trying to dominate yourself. Start understanding yourself. Ask better questions. Because when discipline is rooted in purpose, it stops feeling like effort. And that is the truth about discipline no one talks about. If this message spoke to you, subscribe to Becoming You and keep growing with us. And if you watched until the end, comment the word alignment below and share what discipline means to you now. Your awareness is the beginning.